Welcome to this afternoon's media conference, which will be a media conference carried by the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Rowley. We've just completed a full day of work starting at 10 a.m. this morning, and we've just a moment ago completed our cabinet retreat for today. And without further ado, I'll invite the Prime Minister to come and address us. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon to you members of the media. Thank you all very much for completing your carnival on time and getting here for this bit of a briefing. I want to begin today's press conference by thanking all those persons in the public sector and the private sector and the security services and the culture and the arts who cooperated fully so as to allow us to once again conclude Carnival and to have it done in a relatively satisfactory way. I mean, there wouldn't be Carnival without some element of bacchanal somewhere. We did have some instances of aggravation or disappointment. But in the end, Carnival 2018 has gone relatively smoothly, and from all reports, there is widespread satisfaction with the festival. However, we did start out with a certain amount of concerns at the security end, and I want to address that a little bit before I go into today's review retreat. And I want to just mention, in my capacity as chairman of the National Security Council, that we did have, and we still do have, very serious concerns about the safety and security of this state. And when the government sees it necessary to indicate that we are dealing with credible threats, I just hope that citizens take that phrase very seriously. As chairman of the National Security Council, I could tell you that we have had to monitor the activities of some of our citizens, a very small minority albeit, but we would be putting our heads in the sand if we do not acknowledge and accept that we as a people are part of the scourge of internationally unacceptable developments, more so in recent times, where some of our citizens have taken positions that are alien to us as a people, and of course detrimental to the well-being of our nation if their teachings and actions are allowed to go unobserved or unchecked. It is not news now to tell you that some of our citizens have gone abroad, have engaged in combat elsewhere, have accepted training elsewhere, have attached themselves to ideologies elsewhere. And some of those points of views form part of the conversation within our borders. And some of the training pose a threat to us as a people. It is against that background that from time to time you would have heard in the Parliament colleagues of ours asking questions of the government as to whether the government is taking steps to ensure that the state pays attention to persons who within the freedoms of our society may be engaged in contemplating, planning, or God forbid, executing actions against the public interest of Trinidad and Tobago. When those questions would have come to us in the Parliament, and some came months ago, not too long ago, you would have heard the government responding, saying Yes, we are observing certain developments on the part of certain persons, certain situations, to ensure that we monitor what is happening within our borders, so that in the event that persons take it upon themselves to harm the national interests, that the best position would be for the state to intervene and fend off or disrupt such activities. I can tell you today, without going into further details, that about a week ago, before Carnival, it came to the government's attention and our monitoring agencies, both local and international, that we did in fact come to the point where very credible information was available to us that there were specific instances being contemplated for action against the Carnival parade. It would have been irresponsible on the part of the government not to have intervened at that stage with that credible information, corroborated information, which has been the outcome of our paying attention and also of relying on inputs from both local and outside. This is not simply a local problem, it's an international problem. But we are required here in Trinidad and Tobago to preserve the safety and security of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I think we've done so with the Carnival parades, having been protected by intervening to respond to the credible threats that we faced 1 week ago. I say no more, since these matters are in the hands of law enforcement, and from here on in we expect that the law will take its course. We are a country run by the rule of law, and the wider public interest ought to prevail within the confines of the rule of law. It is not for me to get into the specific details, but the Minister of National Security and other agencies are involved, and the operations are ongoing. And we expect that they will play themselves out, and the government, through its various spokespersons, would provide information to the public as and when that information is releasable. It's a very thin edge that we walk here. One is to ensure that there is sufficient public information available so that the public could be aware of what is happening, but at the same time that information is so managed as to preserve our sources and methods, and also to preserve the participation of our international partners who from time to time will assist in more ways than one. So it's a balancing act, and I think on this occasion that we did get it right in that we didn't panic the country, but we were able to respond in a very comprehensive way and continue so to do. I don't expect that this would be the last time that we would face these kinds of challenges, but our security services, I don't know that we have actually faced this particular level of activity, but they would have learned, and they also were prepared to respond. And I want to thank the leadership in all the security agencies, the SSA, the police, the Defense Force, and those officers in particular who worked round the clock. There are some officers who worked pretty much night and day continuously and had to be doing that so as to carry out the protection that was required in order to have the Carnival and to have the situation brought under control. And I want to ensure that they are acknowledged for having done the job that they've been hired to do, and some went beyond the call of duty. And during Carnival, from all reports, and I've been out myself and I've seen it, that we really did saturate the areas with our personnel, and the presence of our uniformed and other officers did bring a sense of comfort to persons who participate in Carnival. Carnival is an economic event in Trinidad and Tobago. It's not just a wine and jam event. It's an economic activity that brings benefits to a lot of people, and to have had it disrupted could have had far-reaching consequences. And we have to accept also that for persons for whom such kinds of activity is attractive, Carnival itself provides the kind of target that we live with. But so far, so good. We leave it now to the law enforcement agencies and the courts, if it comes to that. And we continue to monitor, to observe, to learn, and to respond as required. Today, the Cabinet met to review 3 areas. One was the economy, the other was the legislative program, and the other was the development program. We had a comprehensive, I shouldn't say comprehensive, we had a comprehensive summary, I should say, of the nature of the economy that we're dealing with, the actions that we've taken, the outcomes so far, and the road ahead that we're pursuing. The Minister of Finance led that discussion in front of the Cabinet and took questions from all around, and we debated a number of things, and we have a number of initiatives on the way, and we are progressing along that. And today's exercise allow us to be a little more fine-tuned and better informed as to how we are progressing along the line that we have been taking, which is to very carefully but deliberately manage our expectations downwards, manage our expenditure downwards, focus our expenditure in such a way as to close the gap between revenue and expenditure, look at our debt profile, and at the same time try and maintain the jobs that we have in hand, and also not put ourselves in a position to incur expenses that we cannot meet, and hopefully very carefully bring ourselves to a balanced budget situation in the not too distant future. That exercise was very useful for all of us, and today we took a third of the time doing that. With respect to the legislative program, we spent a lot of time focusing on the legislative program, particularly those items of legislation which are either in the Parliament or on the way to the Parliament, which would have an impact on our fight against crime. What we did observe is that from all reports, all areas of criminal activity seem to be on the decline in terms of reports of those crimes, but there's one intractable one, which is murders, which seem to be beyond all our efforts to turn that around, because last year we picked off the streets over 1,000 firearms, and we just have to conclude that it did not have the effect of reducing the number of murders, and therefore we have to redouble our efforts in ensuring that the easy availability of firearms on the streets in Trinidad and Tobago, the entry of firearms into the country, that we focus more on that. But most importantly, we concluded that given the nature of the crimes, a significant portion of the crimes, a lot of it being revenge killings, gang protection of turf, gang activity of organizing of criminal conduct for profit, that we really do need anti-gang legislation to criminalize the action of gangs, and we will continue to pursue that because we believe that it will help the security services and it will dissuade a number of persons from choosing crime as a way of life. We also looked at a number of other pieces of legislation that are coming up, and we not predict, but we outlined that the Parliament would be meeting in very frequent sessions to conclude a number of items of matters that are before the Parliament, either in Joint Select Committee or going into committee or coming out of the Legislative Review Committee of the Cabinet. So there's a lot of work coming to the Parliament, and you can look forward to protracted parliamentary sittings in the not too distant future to get these bills legislated and to bring us to a point where we get the benefit of the legislation that we are taking to the Parliament. And the work at the AG office, there's a tremendous amount of work being done at the AG office. Among them, we are hoping that tomorrow the The Tobago self-government bills will begin its process through the cabinet to get to the parliament for joint select committee attention sometime in the not too distant future. We laid last sitting, we laid the Property Tax Act. We are coming very soon with the Revenue Authority legislation. We have a number of other pieces of legislation that are to tidy up existing approaches, and we expect that the Parliament would be dealing with this in a very purposeful way in the weeks and months ahead. With respect to the development program, the works in the development program are important to ensure that we maintain significant economic activity that would give us the economic growth that we are after. That economic growth comes largely from expenditure in the development program, largely on infrastructure, housing, and other kinds of expenditure. Because when you hear about a project and that project costs X million dollars, that X million dollars is an expenditure that's paid on salaries, on wages, on materials, and the materials themselves create more activity in their production and preparation and so on. So these projects are important. And insofar as there are bottlenecks or there are shortages of funding here and there, we just have to get these projects going so that they contribute to the economic activity that brings economic growth. And economic growth drives government revenue drives support, and we just have to accept for the time being and for the not too distant future that government activity drives the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. That's a fact of life. We're moving also to bring into the economic sphere new operations. We're working on refueling the E-Tech industrial park to get that kind of non-oil activity up there. We're moving towards, we have some considerations for some aluminium business that we're working on. We're close to some agreements with respect to a MOU with the private sector, international private sector. When we would have settled that, we would make the appropriate announcements if we succeed in getting it confirmed. We are also pressing on with the projects in the tourism sector. So these are all areas of activity that would give us the kind of growth that we're looking for and the diversification that we are talking about. Because if we don't do these activities, diversification remain a cliche. Unfortunately, this administration is embarking upon these matters at a time when the revenues are down, but we still have to carry a development program. In this budget, we're having a development program of about $6 or $7 billion, and we are expecting to have the revenues to do that going forward. But whatever it is, we expect to put the effort in bringing our record expenditure down to meet our very low revenue side while trying to grow those revenues and also maintaining a development program. So we spent the day dealing with those three things to ensure that there's a better outcome from the effort being made by the government. We have been working very hard in reducing waste. We have been tackling corrupt practice in a variety of ways, and all of these are contributors to a better outcome 2018, 2019, 2020 going forward. We are also going to be coming to the Parliament very soon with the legislation with respect to local government reform, and we'll be implementing some aspects of local government reform in the coming months with it in 2018. So this is the kind of work program we have in front of us, and if you do have any questions, I'll take some from you now.
Hi, Dr. Rowley. Kamal Georges from CNC3 News. Just to return to the issue of the terror threat a little bit. In your statement, you said through collaboration with, I guess, local and international partners, right? There's a little bit of, I guess, uncertainty. The U.S. Southern Command is saying that it was involved in an operation in this country. Local law enforcement is saying that it is refusing to say whether or not U.S. was involved or not. When you say international partners, do you mean the U.S., and can you say where the intelligence came from?
Now, you have to, the words are to be read very clearly. for what they mean. From one end, it's quite correct for the United States spokespersons to say that they were not involved in operations in Trinidad and Tobago. The entire operation, with respect to the authorities here taking action against or with our citizens, were 100% Trinidad and Tobago security services. So there was no U.S. personnel involved in those operations. However, with respect to the gathering and sharing of information, this is a continuous process ongoing between Trinidad and Tobago and our international partners, including the United States. So there's no contradiction there. For example, when the Commissioner of Police tells you that it is being done by law enforcement in Trinidad and Tobago, that's a correct statement, but it does not exclude our sharing and using information from outside our borders if that information contributes to our operations being successful.
You, Dr. Rowley, we didn't see you very much over the Carnival weekend. I think very briefly on Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. Were you advised by your own security to not be so visible for Carnival because of this threat?
No, my own security didn't advise me that, but what I was advised, since before Carnival, we were very engaged, and I remain very engaged with respect to ensuring that what was happening was being properly monitored. So I remained very engaged in what was going down with respect to this threat, and I chose not to be away from basically that ability to remain engaged. And I did come out on Tuesday, and I had quite an enjoyable carnival, I must say. But the security issues were sufficiently concerning to cause me to spend my time connected to what was happening on that score.
Prime Minister, you indicated a little while ago that this might not be the last time that we might experience a possible threat like this. Is there some information which is available to you or the NSC which suggests that there is more coming as well?
We do have an ongoing operation now with respect to the threat that we faced last week, right? However, we must understand that there are citizens in Trinidad and Tobago who engage themselves in subscribing to ideologies and activities which, if taken to their logical conclusion, could cause detriment to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We would be burying our heads in the sand if we do not accept that. And I can tell you, as chairman of the National Security Council, leading the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago, we understand that that is a reality. And I just want to say one thing else on that score. There are some people who believe that this is a joke. There are some people who believe that this is personal persecution. Trinidad and Tobago is as free a society as anywhere in the world. And insofar as claims of religious persecution or ethnic persecution is concerned, that holds no water with respect to the security services responding to criminal conduct on the part of any and every person in Trinidad and Tobago. I will go further to say there is no policy, no program to persecute any group, ethnic or otherwise, in Trinidad and Tobago. We remain as free as we always were, free to worship, free to subscribe to any sect. But if you engage in criminal conduct, regardless of who you are or where you are subject to the security services monitoring your activity and intervening on behalf of the population of Trinidad and Tobago as and when the security services deem that to be necessary. But there's no persecution taking place of any individual or group of individuals in Trinidad and Tobago, but there will be resolute prosecution of persons who choose to put to the detriment the peace and good order of Trinidad and Tobago without fear or favor, malice or ill will.
You also indicated a little while ago that you were overall satisfied with how Carnival went. There was not security-wise, things were relatively fine, but is that not a contradiction when we have, say, 4 homicides and a set of murders and so on? Is that not a contradiction?
Well, I didn't. I said I was relatively satisfied. The best Carnival is one that nothing happens. But we did have, unfortunately, some incidents which we could have done without. We had 2 stabbings. Notwithstanding all that is happening to us, you still have people walking around a Carnival band with weapons. We did have some people who had too much to drink and misbehaved. But in the overall scheme of things, in terms of the organization of the festival, the execution of the programs and so on, I think by and large that the organizers did reasonably well. And to add insult to that, for some people's part, the judging seemed to have gone down very well. And that is all part of Carnival. You know, we got good results. I won't tell you which ones I like, but Carnival seemed to have gone, the organization. But of course, that simply means Carnival being what it is, there's a huge space of room for great improvement. We can always, you know, improve on it. Because sometimes we behave as though it comes upon us suddenly. Right? So.
What did you like for Road March?
Road March? I don't know. I didn't listen to enough tunes. I must say that I didn't hear a lot of calypsos this season. I was a little too busy. But I did take part in some of the activities, and by and large, they were quite well organized and quite well done. There's some aspects of Carnival that need a bit of conversation, though, but not for today.
Very quickly, one final thing on the issue of the terror threat. Have you been advised as chairman of the National Security Council whether or not we are close to charging any of the people who've been named?
No, I haven't been advised like that, but I'm sure that I am aware that there are legal challenges, and because citizens' rights are being interfered with, there will be legal issues, but I leave that in the realm where it belongs. We do have a structure in this country. The rule of law prevails and will continue so to do.
Prime Minister, would the anti-terrorism legislation help curtail this threat in the future, if there are any?
We do have anti-terrorism legislation. We do have another bill going to the Parliament, which deals with another aspect of it, and all of these will contribute to strengthening our ability to respond to the challenges that we're facing. I mean, 2017 is not 1917. It's not 1987. The world today, given the internet, given the doctrines, given what has been happening around us, we will be fooling ourselves if we believe that we are immune to some of the horrendous actions that have taken place elsewhere in the world. We are in the middle of all of that in more ways than one, and it behooves us to be able to focus on it and to be able to defend ourselves and the population if and when that is required.
Was this terror threat similar to what we see taking place in other parts of the world? Was it linked to explosions or bombings?
I couldn't go into those details at this point in time. It's an ongoing operation, but I could tell you this, that we are not the only country, or the first time that a country has indicated to its population that its security services had information on a credible threat, and therefore you respond accordingly. This has happened in very many countries before, and in fact, it's a better position to be in, rather than to have to respond to an outcome because you were not properly informed or you were not in a position to respond, to disrupt or to eliminate the threat.
I just wanted to ask briefly, in respect to sticking with crime but with the legislative agenda, was there any sort of plan being fleshed out today regarding movement ahead on the anti-gang legislation?
Yes, we are in contact, the government is in contact with the opposition. The last position was that we were informed that the opposition has indicated that they were 2 or 3 matters that can form the basis of further discussion, and we are expecting that such a meeting can take place. And if that meeting takes place and there's movement, then we can see what happens there. But this is a matter that has been dealt with in great detail, and we did write to the opposition asking them that if they had amendments or further suggestions prior to a meeting, let us know, and I think they've done so, and now we can progress along that line, and hopefully we come to a position sometime in the not too distant future where anti-gang legislation is regarded as an integral part of the tool that the security services can have in their arsenal to respond to the known activities that we're facing. I was troubled when it was being said after the last vote in the parliament that the country did not need anti-gang legislation. That is in fact a position that will get us into trouble every time, because we do need anti-gang legislation, because a lot of the criminal organized misconduct is done by gangs, and a lot of the threats that we're facing are threats that are conceived, conceptualized, and prepared for action by groups of persons, and therefore it is quite incomprehensible for persons in authority to be saying that we don't need anti-gang legislation, or worse, that we put legislation in place and hamstring it with all kinds of strictures.
Doctor, are you at liberty to give an update on Minister Maxi Coffey? There have been questions surrounding his health and how he's recuperating.
The only update that we can give, as we've been giving along the way, are updates that come from the family. And so far, the update is that he has made considerable progress, and that he, the exercise that he undertook abroad was successful, and he should be back home in the not too distant future. We don't have a date, right? But we rely on getting that from family reports to us at this end.
Turn to his portfolio as minister?
Well, it all depends on what condition he is in, and the portfolio. He come back to he has not been relieved of the portfolio, as you know. But we'll have to assess the situation when he returns to determine how strenuous he can function.
That you had mentioned previously that you might make a slight adjustment regarding that, because you were handling his portfolio.
Yes, I'm handling it, and that is still on the cards. Maybe next week or so I'll rectify that.
But you are still handling right now?
Yes, it's still being handled by me, but I propose to adjust that in the very near future. I have not spoken to him directly for a while, but other members of the cabinet have been. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm out in Lahoket next week, Thursday, where I will speak to the community there for a while. We have a first public meeting in that area, and we'll have a number of other meetings after that. But we'll be out next week, Thursday. We'll be at the Lahoket Community Center. Yeah, we do a bit of a standing on public information out.
Is the state bearing Minister Coffey's medical bills?
Is it what? Some of it. The state is bearing a part of it. We did, in fact, when his condition was critical, the cabinet undertook to support him in a life-saving way, and we put a limit to that, and that's eventually when that is done, we'll give a proper report to the country.
What is the limit?
I couldn't say offhand, but it was not insubstantial.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. And now that the carnival is over, back to work.